So I guess we wouldn't all be in this room. We wouldn't have come to the conference today if we didn't all agree that the world is going mobile. So I don't think I need to talk for too long on that particular topic. But it is fair to say that different organisations and different people are on different trajectories. And certainly there was some discussion this morning about, where do you start? Does it start with your first app? Does it start by looking at some of your back-end systems and so on and so forth? So what I'm going to do is maybe identify 5 considerations associated with developing your mobile strategy and maybe help you to identify where you might be on that trajectory and the kind of things you might look out for. So the first piece is I guess, first of all, recognizing that enterprise mobility is by no means new. It's been around for a very long time. Traditionally, though, it's probably looked a little bit different. So from a device perspective, it's been very much around proprietary, maybe ruggedized devices running with Windows 6, 6.5 operating systems. Generally, very much point solutions, if you like, to fix one specific area. Very proprietary and locked down. And the deployments have tended to be on-premise largely. So, over the years, that looked like very large, long-tailed projects with pretty significant budgets. So, whilst enterprise mobility isn't new, I think it looks pretty different today. And it's had quite a significant facelift, I should say. So today, what organizations really are doing is taking a mobile-first approach and saying, okay, so enterprise mobility touches many parts of our organization. There's many considerations to be borne in mind. How do I look at it now through a kind of a mobile mindset? How does it affect, for example, my back-end systems? How does it affect my middleware? How does it affect devices? How does it affect security, single sign-on? All of those things need to be borne in mind. Because as we know, 80% plus of solutions that are built today or run out today are mobile first. So the kind of things that our customers talk to us about are help us to understand how I run my business differently. Help me to understand what my IT organization should look like, for example. Help me to understand the difference between our old waterfall approaches to projects and how do we become a little bit more agile in our thinking? What should our attitude to risk be? And those are the kind of considerations that, public sector organizations are starting to look at. Somebody who you would never in a million years have considered to be, looking at agile just a couple of years ago. So with that in mind, the second thing I guess we'd start to say is it's not just about the device, clearly. It's not just about MDM and locking it down. What we must start to enable and create, if you like, is an environment where it's okay for business people to innovate. It's okay for businesses to look at the internal processes and start to identify how these can be utterly transformed and be free to do that, but with the confidence that the IT organization are comfortable that the controls, the standards, the security, the compliance, version control, all of those boxes have been ticked, because otherwise we'll have anarchy. So how do we do that? So what we tend to advocate and what we have identified or seen as being most successful is where organizations take a very strategic approach to this, where it becomes an ongoing iterative process. And actually, whilst this looks like one circle operating in a linear fashion, actually each of these boxes is a process in itself and a circle in itself. So at the top, and we had this conversation earlier on, we actually had a question earlier on that relates directly to this. It starts with, what does each process within my business look like in a mobile-centric world? And that, to a large degree, requires a certain amount of rethink, strategic rethink, business process re-engineering, if you like, but also take that through the whole way to UX and UI design to ensure that your output is much more user-centric. When that is done, and when the business understands exactly what they're trying to achieve from these solutions and what the core components of them are, it becomes much easier to enable the development teams to do their job. And it also becomes much easier to understand what are the particular skill sets that are required, horses for courses, if you like. So in some cases, it might be that you've got a internal development team with traditional skill sets, maybe who are very much capable of doing some of the back-end integration piece, but with no skill set whatever in user experience for mobile, with no experience maybe in the deployment, with poor experience on design, for example. So collaboration becomes a theme very much that arises over and over again. So how can an organization create an ecosystem or a platform, if you like, to enable different teams to collaborate, or different skill sets to collaborate, some of whom might be internal, some of whom might be on far shore, some of near shore, but each working collaboratively on a single project. And how can IT be comfortable that the appropriate standards and compliance are in place in order to enable that to happen safely and securely. So as we move forward then, the integration piece obviously is a key one. And integration in the world of mobile obviously has certain connotations. So it's not just about making data available to the mobile worker, but also enabling data to flow in a two-way direction, but taking into consideration things like not everybody clearly is going to be sitting at a desktop. Obviously, some people are going to be offline. Some people are going to need to work seamlessly between an online and an offline environment. So what does that mean, for example, to do with a caching strategy for your own device, caching strategy for the cloud, caching strategy for back-end, and how do you want to manage that handshake between the device, the cloud, and your back-end systems? And those sorts of design concepts are relatively new for most enterprise organizations because they simply just weren't relevant heretofore. Testing is key. Absolutely key, and very often we've seen organizations really struggle with this because while it's BYOD is fantastic, it does make your ecosystem that bit more complex. So I think minimum standards need to be set, and particularly as that relates to testing, you've got to have a policy that says, okay, here's what we're going to test against, because otherwise you're just going to create an entire industry around testing. It gets difficult with iOS. You've got a single operating system running on a single piece of hardware, but as you look at Android, you've got multiple operating systems running on multiple hardwares, and some of them with very questionable quality standards, to be frank. So that's a key one. Management and deployment. So it's amazing how organizations, a lot of organizations, really still are unclear as to what their deployment and their ongoing management strategy will be. So are we going to be comfortable deploying through public stores? If we are, what does that mean for our authentication and our security policies? Have we got enough confidence in their rigor? If we're going to go through a private store, what does that mean in terms of making sure that the appropriate quality and check marks are in place, and also in terms of version control? What's our policy associated with upgrades? How often are we going to force them? Are we going to allow users to make their own decisions, and so on? So from a management point of view, it's interesting. We find, I'll talk a little bit in a moment about what FeedHenry is and what we do, but one of the things that we find very often is by having all of the integrations in place for most of our organizations to multiple back-end systems, and in many cases these are mission critical and business critical systems, we actually become a health check in many respects for the health of those back-end systems and how they're working in the wee small hours of the night, as it were. And very often we, by virtue of having those probes in place, know what is happening and know, if something missed a beat when an overnight process was taking place. And heretofore, that wouldn't have had much of an impact for desktop, but it actually does for mobile, because it can completely throw an app off. So you've got end users coming in the next morning saying, hey, my app is broken. The reality is the app's perfect. Actually, what's broken is your back-end system has missed a beat and needs to be reset. And those are the probes and the 24-hour-ness, if you like, of mobile that weren't necessarily the case before. So I guess the key point of this slide is, we did an earlier presentation around the complexity of enterprise mobility and why we all of a sudden being asked to become experts in many new areas. This, I guess, encapsulates that and helps you hopefully to understand the nitty-gritty and the complexities that are there, and that not everybody is going to be expert in all of these areas. Finally, from the fourth criteria that we're going to look at is from a platform perspective. So FeedHenry, the company I work for, is a mobile application platform. The question is, why would you need one, or who does need one? Who doesn't need one? One rule of thumb, to throw it out there, it's a bit crude, but it stands up in many cases, is from Gartner. Sorry, Nick. But Gartner, a good few years ago, developed the Gartner Rule of Three. And crude and all as it is, it actually ticks a lot of boxes. So if you're a large organization seeking to roll out more than one app, 3, if you're going to target 3 or more operating systems, or 3 or more back-end systems from an integration perspective, any one of those, if you tick any one of those boxes, you're going to end up in a situation where you should take a platform approach. The question is, do you want to make a strategic decision earlier on and go there first and scale, or do you want to wait until it's a little bit too late and then it gets really hard? But you're going to have to do it one way or the other. So what does a platform do? Well, quite simply, it enables people to design, develop, build, deploy, integrate, and manage a portfolio of mobile solutions easier, quicker, cheaper, faster, better. That's what it does in simple terms. How does it do it? Well, on the client side, it should enable you to BYOT, as the term's now, bring your own tool set. It should enable your developers to decide what's the best way to build an app. Is it native? Is it cross-platform? Is it drag and drop? Is it zero code? How do I want to do this? What's the best approach to take? So in other words, it should give you the flexibility to be that innovative, as we spoke about earlier on in the presentation. From a back-end perspective, it should give you the ability to connect and integrate easily to your back-end systems for mobile. So integration is one thing, but what about the ability to monitor and manage those integrations? What about the ability to perform that synchronization, that caching mechanism? The ability to distribute and integrate with the MDM players out there automatically, so that it's literally a press button job to connect and distribute your binaries through their public stores. Other features such as reporting and analytics, API management, storage, a build farm, so to be able to actually compile the binaries to be sent to the stores, security, authentication. All of those issues should be dealt with easily and helpfully through a platform. And when they are, that gives the comfort to your IT organization to say, yeah, we've actually got those controls in place. We've got that compliance in place now. I'm comfortable for you as a business to now go and talk to your favorite agency or our partners in the systems integrator world, or hire in contractors to do the back-end integration and build different apps, because they are constrained within the platform and within the policy and the compliance that we accept. Also, what it enables us to do is build something once and reuse it over and over again. So if you've mobilized one back-end system, it's done. You can build 20 apps, or you can build one app to exploit that. From a deployment perspective, you want to have the flexibility to say, some of my solutions, some of my apps are maybe less sensitive, or they're customer facing anyway, so they're exposed to the outside world. I'm comfortable using cloud, public cloud, to do that. For others, maybe they're internal use, or maybe they're carrying very sensitive data like financial data and board reports and so on, or maybe they're in the healthcare world or the security world, and I feel less sensitive about using public cloud, but I want to have my own instance of a private cloud, or I actually even want to go on-prem. Can I start in one area and migrate to others? So that portability, if you like, and that flexibility of portability is very, very important if you're going to be able to tick all those boxes. So I guess the final piece is actually to look at a checklist for if you're looking at platform providers, if you're looking at a strategic partner, what are the considerations that you should look at? From our perspective, ease of app migration where applicable. So the ability to look at existing applications that you may have built or bought, and can you bring them into the ecosystem easily, so that you don't end up with two strategies. Can you onboard existing apps easily, so that you've got one strategy? Can you embrace cloud for scalability? And we won't talk too much about that because I think that's pretty clear. Are you embracing open standards and toolkits, or are you going down a proprietary road? For us, that's probably the single most important thing to look at, because the number of organizations today who have gone down a proprietary route, been burned, and are now starting again 3 or 4 years later is quite significant. The cost and the risk associated with that is clearly huge. Collaboration is probably the big theme currently this year, as organizations seek to scale and seek to build what are becoming known as kind of app factories, if you like, where you've got disciplines of people disparately located, usually, performing different tasks, but being able to also store their code and repose their code in a single place. So you've got version control, code control, and a single process for managing multiple disciplines. Integrates back-end as a system. I spoke about that already. So an MBAS, mobile back-end as a service, to enable you to quickly and easily, in a lightweight and fast way, connect to back-end systems, preferably using out-of-the-box connectors where available, and again, try and maximize as much of that reuse as possible. Online-offline synchronization is an absolute must, and it must be enterprise grade. In other words, to be able to connect with multiple back-end systems from tens or hundreds of client-side applications simultaneously, because that's the reality of what's required if you go there on the consumer side also. Security from device to back end goes without saying. So have you got those out-of-the-box capabilities there, whether it be HTTPS, whether it be encryption and so on. Integrated testing we've spoken about, integration management, and flexibility with no lock-in. So flexibility and openness is obviously a key one for us, and we're pretty much have that out there. So I'm not sure how we're doing for time, Nick. Am I? 2 minutes, okay. So very, very quickly, very quick use case. Bunzl is an existing customer of ours. For those of you who don't know them, Fortune FTSE 150 company, about 6 billion in turnover, and they operate in 27 countries. So they're in the hygiene, healthcare, food services area. Very successful organisation, who've identified that their business is fundamentally changing, and they need to embrace enterprise mobility, not just internally, but for their audience, who more and more want to interact with them, buy things from them via remote locations, via mobile devices. So for them, they needed to embrace or embark on a strategic direction about 18 months, 2 years ago, involving every level of their organisation, from senior executives all the way down to frontline staff, to help understand exactly what parts of their business can be fundamentally disrupted and changed by mobile. they started with their sales force, with the field-based staff, whereby there was a lot of paper, whereby there was a lot of delay in getting that paperwork back to head office, whether it be order forms, payments, and so on and so forth, invoicing and so on. And they also wanted to enhance the situation by getting much higher quality collateral in the face of their customers via an iPad. Now, they've got a massive product portfolio, so not surprisingly, their products change quite a lot. So they only want to do that once via central database and connect to it via their mobile devices. So today, their sales force are completely mobile enabled to enable them to showcase products and services, take orders, take leads, and so on and so forth. In doing this, we connected to, I think it was either 5 or 6 back-end systems, including 3 different CRMs. So it was done in an agile, lightweight fashion, relatively quickly, relatively low cost on the back-end side, to enable them to now say, okay, so we've got a lot of those plugins in place. How else can we reuse those? For who else is interested in that data? And obviously the big one is their audience, their consumer audience. So how can they start to move their customer base, their very large customer base, away from web, not away from web, but away from web only, to any device, a choose your own device type approach. And today we're working with them on that journey to completely bring them to become a mobile-first organization and to replace most of the legacy infrastructure that's placed, the SOA infrastructure, if you like, including a number of the proprietary old systems. So that's it from me. I think we've just about run out of time. I don't know if you've any time for questions. So.
Probably take a quick question if there is one from the crowd. Okay, thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much.